Now that the Premier League season is over, it's time for our yearly review of all 20 teams and giving a review of how their season went and what maybe we can look forward to next season. So let's get straight into it, going in alphabetical order with the runners-up that were Arsenal, and I think it's fair to say their season can be viewed through different lenses. Having held an 8-point lead at the top of the Premier League, a position they occupied for 204 days, there's no escaping the feeling of missed opportunity, but the collapse of the title challenge does not change the fact that they have taken a giant leap forward this season. Arsenal were considered to be in a top 5 fight this year, yet with the second youngest team in the division, they accrued the highest points since the Invincibles. Lack of depth and City's relentlessness ultimately did for them, but they were so great to watch early on in the season. It was a joy to watch their young stars flourish, and high points over the course of the campaign, including wins over Tottenham and Chelsea and victories over Liverpool, Manchester and Newcastle. Their late loss of form, as well as City finding extra gear, invites inevitable scrutiny of their characters, but fans will be reminded of stoppage time victories over the likes of United, which made the impossible feel real. Reece Nelson's 97th minute winner against Bournemouth sparked celebrations unlike the Emirates Stadium for a long while, and while they ultimately fell short of their target, Arsenal's season will be remembered as one which brought optimism back to the club, and ultimately one that can be viewed very positively, especially for the future. Moving on then to Aston Villa, and where do you start with them? Rarely the Premier League seen such quite contrasting fortune, but that comes down to one man, Unai Emery. The harsh telling of his difficulties in interviews at Arsenal have been cast aside by the Europa League win at Villarreal in 21, but there was still no guarantee his second spell in England would work. It did not take time to suggest it might. In the almost 3 years since he left the Prem, Emery is set to work improving his English beyond recognition, but his results on the pitch are what has really caught the eye since he arrived at Villa Park. Had the season started today, Villa would only be on goal difference away from the Champions League, sandwiched between Newcastle and Manchester United in the table, and only 4 points off second spot. That it would be remarkable enough in itself, but it's the inherited a team that had just been thrashed 4-0 by Newcastle and won only 3 of their 13 with a toxic atmosphere. His main achievement has been the simplest and toughest, spending plenty of money unwisely since the Premier League return. As the squad he inherited, he turned that side from overachievers to winning 5 of his first 7, but then put a small bump in the road to go on a 10-game unbeaten run, and Steven Gerrard never seemed to know his preferred style lineup, but Emery's consistency has really pulled Villa would have bitted your hands off for a top 10 finish, but a European feat is just incredible. For a man who's had so much success there, I think Villa fans can get very excited ahead of next season. Moving on then to Bournemouth, and it's been quite a turnaround for pre-season relegation favourites under Gary O'Neill. His predecessor Scott Barker was dismissed 26 days into the season after claiming his squad wasn't good enough for the Premier League. The 9-0 loss at Liverpool pointed towards a long, hard 9 months, but O'Neill galvanised the group and made a mockery of that hesitation. There have been needs to negotiate American billionaire Bill Foley's takeover, but January provided a crucial window for the Cherries. Ottawa signed for $20 million from Lorient, and Lona Vigna from Roma stood out. A dramatic defeat in February at Arsenal for a 2-goal lead instilled belief that salvation could be reached. From that moment, Bournemouth rose from the canvas and never looked back, winning 6 of their 9 to be 9 points to the bottom 3 with 4 left. Job done with plenty to spare. O'Neill encouraged his players to prove just everyone wrong, and Bournemouth have done that with flying colours. Moving on to Brentford, and once upon a time Brentford were bottom of the pile when it came to the West London, and they stood in the shadow of the glitz and glamour of London, Fulham, Chelsea above them, and don't forget the time QPR tried to blow Brentford out of existence with a fellow takeover in 1960. Now no more. Brentford ended this Premier League season as the highest ranked West London club this season, only title chasing Arsenal and Tottenham, who they beat, were the London teams to finish ahead of them. Last season Brentford were the plucky new kids on the block in their debut Premier League campaign, and many expected them to suffer from second season seen during this time round. Instead they went to the next level. The Bees' top half finish saw them become better against lesser side in the league while retaining their tricky status against the top team. Brentford picked up 4 points away from home against the top 2. There were only 2 clubs to win at Man City across all 4 competitions. They beat United and Liverpool at home along with Tottenham and Chelsea away and deserved top 10. Most importantly, they've also shown they are more without Ivan Toney, who they'll be without for Mate next season. Even without him, Wissa and Mbumo comes out of his shell. The improvement of Shade and Dansgaard next season will definitely help them. Ultimately, David Brea leaving may bother them, but they seem to be improving each year with a Danish manager in charge and Thomas Frank, and with Brighton showing that you can upset the odds, I think Brentford could definitely be a team to watch to do that. Moving on then to Brighton, and it's the start of the season when Brighton lost Potter, Basuma, Trossard, Cucurella. Few would have been rushing to back them for top 10, but this is no ordinary club. It stepped De Zerbi, who put down the feathers dust due by Potter and replaced him with attacking battering runs. A clear upgrade off the Brighton production line came Caicedo, Mitoma, Estupinan, and it helped the Seagulls roar into Europe. They had done it with a backdrop of some sensational performances, such as the one against Man City. It's easy to forget in 97, Brighton almost fell out of the Football League and almost out of existence. Tony Bloom would have been in the stands that day. He's now running a show and an owner who does not revel in the limelight. He stayed in the stands as the playing staff did a lap of honour to celebrate the winner over Southampton and secured European adventures. His data model has provided the backbone of what has been a phenomenal period of recruitment on and off the pitch. Bloom, who made his fortune beating the bookmakers by building algorithms that outsmarted the market, is now outsmarting Premier League football because of the way he runs the show. And yeah, what a story it's been and what a way they are run at the moment. Moving on into a team that's run less well, Chelsea. It's hard to look back on this season with anything other than a disaster. After taking over a year ago, Todd Bowley oversaw a transfer spend of more than 600 million, sacked 2 head coaches, and has seen their team finish in the bottom half of the Premier League for the first time in nearly 30 years. Despite spending more money on new players than any club in the history of past 2 transfer windows, Chelsea performances have regressed dramatically. Not only have they tumbled down the table, they were brushed aside by Real Madrid in the Champions League, failed to win a game in the FA Cup or Carabao Cup. Chelsea lifted 2 trophies last season but never came close to silverware this time round, with the season essentially over by the time they were knocked out of Europe mid-April. In Chelsea have barely been a resembling team since the run of 3-1s in the Graham Potter at the start of March, with Frank Lampard unable to inspire any kind of turnaround. Instead, Lampard openly questioned his players' effort in both training and matches that have gone through the motions, counted down the days until the season ends. The impending arrival of Pochettino and the promise to clear out the bloated and underperforming squad will inherit provides hope for the future, but lessons must be learned from this chaotic and dramatic and yeah, let's face it, quite unfortunate season for Chelsea. Moving on then to Crystal Palace, and Palace campaign started with bundles of optimism. Vieira did well in his first season in charge. The squad was young and vibrant, and there was hope for the first time the Eagles could soar higher. Nobody would have predicted Roy Hodgson would be the man to save the season. The signs early on were Vieira's side had a modest start, winning 5 Premier League games, but a worrying slump in the first 3 months of 2023 saw the former Arsenal man sacked, replaced by the man who'd taken the reins from 18 months previously. The difference was immediate. Palace won their first game under Hodgson, beating Leicester 2-1 with Mateta goal, winning as many games under the former England boss in 2 months as they did as Vieira. And the squad was always able to be competitive in the top flight, hosting some incredible young talents. Ebeze having his first England call-up, having scored 6 with 1 assist in Hodgson's 9 game, having just scored 4 and 3 assists in the previous 28. It leaves Palace finishing respectable 11th. But the question remains, who will be in charge next season? Talks will take place over the summer. Could Hodgson steady the ship for a year or two? But is he Crystal Palace's long-term answer? The answer is probably no. But yeah, it will be have to see where it goes. And yeah, definitely will be very interesting to see what happens. But moving on then to Everton. And the last time Everton were relegated was in 51. Clement Attlee was Prime Minister. Cliff Britton was manager. And Everest had yet to be scaled. It took 3 years for the club to get out of the second division. Monday marks the 70th anniversary of Edmund Hillary and Norgate's historic ascent. Everton will also have the Platinum Jubilee at the summit of English football, but their supporters have stared into the abyss throughout the 60 Nights campaign. Fans with headsets replacing transistor radios for sayings such as "this will never go out of fashion." News from Leeds and Leicester reverberated around Goodison like wildfire. For Everton, there's 9 league titles and the most number of seasons of any club in the top 5. This had to come their Everest. 3 successive home defeats and the aggregate 7-1 hiding in a week at Bournemouth earlier in the season in the League and Cup struck an ominous chord. Back in January, ever since the board had been absent from Goodison Park for their own safety, with those in power vilifying their own fan base, it is quite a feat for players and fans to have mobilised yet again in the face of adversity. Dwight McNeil prepared for Sunday's game watching with Lance Starr. Jerry Mina referenced Michael Jordan, and when the fans stood at the famous go-around, they had avoided their day of ignominy and they were flying very close to the sun with a sweeping relief. Now must come a summer of change. For Fulham, Yo-Yo Club no more. Their previous 2 promotions have been hit by immediate relegation after, and though many took them to go the same way again, that never looked like happening this season. An entertaining draw by Liverpool set the tone, and by late October they were into the European positions and already 9 points clear of the relegation zone. Marco Silva soon demonstrated that he had built a team capable of more than anticipated. Mitch Richard was one of only 4 players to reach double figures for the Premier League goals by the turn of the year, but it was more around that one man. Paulinho was a revelation. William defied time in some sensational performances. Silva has improved in midfield too, with the likes of Harrison Reed. Tim Ream had been a leader at the back. Burnley impressive in goal. The creative Andres Pereira looked a £10 million bargain. The result is Fulham's best league finish in over a decade. Perhaps the only blot of the season being that FA Cup quarter-final against Manchester United, with Mitrovic's passion, let's say, slightly spilling over. But it's also fueled what's been a fine season for them. Moving on to Leeds, and Leeds escaped on the final day of last year, but this year it felt inevitable. A full manager campaign often does that. Jesse Marsch was celebrating this time last year, but Bielsa's success to dramatically keep the club after a 12-game rescue mission. £140 million spending spree, investing the £100 million raised from the sales of Rafinha and Phillips to bring in 9 players, raised expectations this season would be different. A further £45.5 million spent on January signalled intent, but Marsch was unable to mould his new look side into a winning one. He was sacked in February, with the club avoiding the Belton 3 on goal difference, with their last victory coming in November. He tried to implement a similar style to Red Bull, but he simply failed to fix Leeds' leaky defence. Sublaka, the club's under-21 coach, had a forgettable 3-game spell, while Leeds scrambled on a replacement, settling on Javi Gracia. Results improved initially, but then a crushing 5-1 defeat to Palace, they even recovered, and Victor Orta was sacked the day before Leeds hit the panic batter and brought in Sam Allardyce with 4 games remaining, claiming he was just as good as Guardiola, Klopp, Arteta, but winless, and Leeds' fate was sealed. Talking only 9 points away from home, and a lack of versatility and grit to grind out results. Key players like Bamford and Rodriguez were either injured or misfiring. Talent like Notto unused. Bielsa's legacy was bringing the club back up, and now he's got where they found them. For Leicester, they were crowned Premier League champions just 7 years ago, but 2,557 days later, they are a second-tier side once again, following on from Blackburn Rovers. It was hard to see the fall from grace coming. Leicester had finished in the top half of each of the previous 5 seasons, missing out Champions League qualification on the final day in 1920 and 2021, prior to the 8th place finish last year. But this league can swallow you up. Make one wrong key decision in terms of recruitment or strategy, and teams will make it past you. The opposition boardrooms are just too shrewd now. One slip of all it takes. Leicester's recruitment was where it went wrong. The likes of Mahrez, Maguire, Fofana, Kante, Chilwell, there was no this year. The likes of Daka, Sumare and Faze for £67 million have been money spent badly. Maddison and Barnes flirted with season-saving performances, but both have faltered in the heat of relegation battle. While Jamie Vardy's legs went last season, so reliance on him proved fruitless. It could be in the Championship now. It could be a long road back in the common theme of a bad ballroom and decisions continues. And it'll be interesting to see how they can do next season, and will they be able to make an immediate return? Who knows? But for Liverpool, there's no disguising for that. Liverpool's 5th place finish this season will be, to quote Salah, a failure. For Jurgen Klopp and his players, they came within 2 games of a historic quadruple just 12 months ago. The exertions of playing 63 matches in total and going head-to-head with champions Man City all the way to the final few seconds of the previous campaign seemed to drain the energy from the Reds after a shortened pre-season, failed to win any of their first 3 games. In fact, incredible as it sounds, Liverpool never found themselves occupying a top 4 berth in the entire season. Not even a 1-0 win over City in October could revive their faltering campaign, as losses against Forest, Leeds soon followed. The Reds went into November's World Cup break as 7-point address to Tottenham in 4th, and hoping that the unique mid-season break would give them a chance to reset. But that proved false, as 2-1 convincing win against Villa and Leicester kept proceedings underway again. But at the end of the year, the season reached new lows with sobering defeats to Brentford, Brighton, Wolves with an aggregate 9-1 scoreline. Things only proved worse. The lethargic setbacks providing a turning point for the campaign by Klopp, who now had nothing to lose, with Liverpool slipping to 10th in the table, 11 points off the top 4. With a rare full week in training in the international week at the end of March, the German began working on Trent's new hybrid role, and with new ideas came new energy as the Reds finished the season strongly. However, it was too little too late for Champions League qualification, and Liverpool's poor away form. They lost 8 times on the road, conquered by just twice the last time out, compounded by losing more players to injury than any other top flight side. Cost them dear, and Klopp's side missed out on top 4 for the first time in 24 years. But when you manage to collect 25 points last year, it's not surprising. For Man City, what more can you say about them? Premier League champions for a 3rd year in a row. They've now won 5 of the last 6 titles and show no signs of stopping. A sensational run of 12 consecutive league wins in the final months of the season saw Guardiola's side dismantle Arsenal's title challenge. At one stage in January, they trailed the Gunners by 8 points, but there was no panic from the reigning champions. Let's face it, City are not in too bad of a state last season, winning the title, but the addition of Haaland, City's juggernaut, has taken them to a new level. Throwing in De Bruyne's assists, Grealish performances, Gundogan's leadership, Rodri's control, Ake's important, Stone's ability to step up. Guardiola has got City firing on all cylinders. The success potentially does not stop there. Attention now turns to securing a treble with the FA Cup and Champions League on the line, only achieved once by United. City's sights is firmly set on the FA Cup final against United on June 3rd and Champions League final against Inter Milan in Istanbul on June 10th, and it's difficult to see how they are stopped now and in the future. The rest of the Premier League, and well, to be honest, the rest of Europe, as you consider the Champions League, need to find some answers, and yeah, they need to find some answers pretty damn fast. But for Manchester United, their rivals, they secured their Carabao Cup in February, their first trophy since 2017, look set to stroll back into the Champions League. Progress in their first season under Erik ten Hag was ahead of schedule. The Dutchman began only the second manager in the club's history and first since Jose Mourinho to win a trophy in his first season in charge at Old Trafford, and the optimism was high after that. At least the club were back on track. And United ended the season wobble, which very nearly opened the door to Liverpool in a race for a top four finish, threatened to take Austin Gloss off the campaign, but it was reapplied by sealing a return to Europe's top table with a game to spare. Another coating can be added that they hold Man City's treble hopes with victory in the FA Cup final. Shockwaves will reverberate around Manchester where City's complete the treble, but Ten Hag often emphasises United are in no position to concern themselves with anything other than a task placed in front of them. Win that final game of the season, Ten Hag's maiden campaign will be considered an undoubted success. For Newcastle, they are back and sooner than anyone expected. After already Hull rescued them from relegation last season, improvement was expected. The first cup final in 24 years and a return to the Champions League for the first time since 2003 was beyond supporters' dreams. Despite the vast wealth of the new ownership group, Newcastle have not just splashed cash to reach this point. Recruitment has been measured and sensible. The real transformation came in the way Ho coached his team throughout, both individual and their collective style. Their excellent defensive record in the first half of the season was evidence of the hours of work on the training ground. Their shift to a more attacking intent in the past few months demonstrates their adaptability. It adds up to a level of performance across the season which rightly earned Newcastle a place among the elite. Among anyone who saw the celebration at St James's Park in recent weeks when the top four place was achieved shows that big clubs can unite, and this is what they achieve. In this stands in the dugout and out the pitch, there is belief, confidence and ambition. That has been missing at Newcastle for a long time, but yeah, let's face it, at the moment with Howe in charge and the future, with all the Saudi Arabian money and the way that club is being run at the moment, that club is most certainly going places. Move on then to Nottingham Forest. Forest owner threw the kitchen sink at Forest Quest for survival last time, splashing millions on 26 new recruits, which included 4 loan signings. But fan favourite Steve Cooper had a job in his hand to get the squad together, with Chelsea's dismal season showing how it can go wrong, and so it proved. Forest were languishing in the relegation zone for the majority of the season until the turn of the year. The club steered clear of the drop zone for 3 months, but slipped back into the danger in early April amid rumours Cooper's job was on the line. The owner made a statement on social media backing him, and 3 successful defeats followed against high-flying Villa and powerhouse Liverpool, Manchester United, but Cooper remained in charge. The turnaround came a 3-1 win over Brighton. Forest proceeded to beat Southampton, draw with Chelsea, and secured survival and ended Arsenal's title fight to a memorable 1-0 win. Morgan Gibbs White was pivotal, running further than any teammate, chipping in with 5 goals, 8 assists, and producing team top stats across the board. After survival, we continue to write this history together, is what the owner said. Southampton, Leeds and Leicester all sacked managers to no avail, but Cooper could well have been Forest's saving grace in the end. And to then the bottom club, Southampton. It's been a sorry season for them, characterised by a circus of promotion and erratic decision making. 3 managers, a record number of games lost, 25, a record amount of money spent, and 1 relegation confirmed. Sports Republic, Spain's new owners have assumed controlling insanely operations running the club in the last week, having promised to be hands off in their approach when they completed the takeover back in January 22. Such a pledge, idealistic or otherwise, has been rescinded. Their co-owner Henrik Klaas, who originally said he did not intend to start any revelations, presumably he's now listed as Saints FC chairman as a personal LinkedIn page, does not imagine this mess would transpire. Harmony eroded, replaced by distrust and disunity. So which would that be? It's the entire board that have been removed, bar one. Toby Steele is currently serving out his notice. Much less revolution, more a complete overthrow, identity lost. Unsurprisingly, delusion on the south coast is rice. Fans have been worn down by the persistent mismanagement of their club. St Mary's becoming a place to mourn rather than rejoice. Ruben Sellers, a mere placeholder, is also set to depart. Southampton also winless in their last 13 Premier League games, 9 losses, the longest since 1989. It's going to take a monumental effort to turn this declining form around in the Championship. Presuming much of the Saints' existing talents will follow high-ranking staff members out of the exit door. There are 68 days between the start of the Championship season and now, and that's going to take a lot of jobs to get them ready for that. Moving on then to Tottenham, having clinched Champions League qualification ahead of Arsenal in May and opened their new campaign with a thumping 4-1 win over Southampton in August, few could have predicted how exactly Tottenham's season will unravel. They spout level on points with Man City at the top of the table in mid-September. The outlet seemingly bright, but a 3-1 reverse at the Emirates Stadium prompted a run which included 7 losses and 12 Premier League games, and they never really recovered. Conte appeared increasingly detached and downbeat in the dugout, and the situation came to a head when, having received surgery to remove his gallbladder in March, he launched an extraordinary attack on his players after a late collapse against Southampton. By that point, Tottenham had already lost hope of silverware, crashing out the FA Cup to second-tier Sheffield United, then existing in the Champions League with a lifeless performance against AC Milan in the second leg of their last 16 clash. Conte left under a cloud, only for club to name his assistant manager Steely as interim boss. It felt like another miss there, and so it proved, with a 49-year-old axed after a 6-1 loss to Newcastle, where they conceded 5 goals in 20 minutes. Still, there was no permanent manager, with the underqualified Ryan Mason next step into Tottenham, and their form continuing despite the best effort of Harry Kane, who somehow got 28 goals. Most supporters will be relieved that this nightmare series is over, but the club seemingly no closer to naming their manager, with Kane's future once again in doubt. No European football, there's little to be excited about. For West Ham, it's been a season to be forget domestically, but could still end up being one of their greatest in the generation if they win a European Conference League final in Prague. Moyes' side will stand the weight of expectation following back-to-back top 7 finishes and a summer expenditure exceeded only by Chelsea and Man United. This was meant to be a season of regression. Instead, hammers were met with regression, and it nearly cost Moyes his job. Reports suggested he was one game away from a chop in January, but Moyes was triumphant in a game against Everton dubbed El Sacchio as he bested Frank Lampard, who was let go by the Toffees a few days later. Moyes just about clung on, and they seem like distant memories now. Often to ride the Mickey Mouse Cup, the Conference League provided salvation for West Ham and their manager. A near-perfect record in the competition has only been a redeeming facet of an otherwise poor season. Now Moyes and his players going to one game, looking to write history of the likes of Moore, Hurst, who are part of the 65 European Cup Winners' Cup winning side, and it would be a perfect way for Declan Rice to depart. Beat Fiorentina on the 7th of June in Prague, and all will be forgiven. Heck, with Europa League qualification and a trophy in the bag, it would look like it would be a season to savour for all the West Ham fans. And finally, to Wolves. The first half of Wolves' season was a mess. Despite considering investing in the summer, large departed with the team in the relegation zone following one win in the first 8 games, and the situation deteriorated under Steve Davis. Enter Julian Lopetegui, with Wolves bottom at Christmas. Their stoppage time winner against Everton on Boxing Day began to turn around, and fears of the dot dissipated long before the end of the season. It was top half form during his 23 games in charge. The January signings helped. Craig Dawson's Lamina had big impact, bringing experience to the team, but had already lost following the decision to allow captain Conor Cody to leave. It was not always pretty under Lopetegui, but he found a way. The home form was critical, 20 points from 11 games. He never did resolve the scoring problems, but that did not matter, with all conceded only 7 goals in those games, a best defensive record on the likes of Man City since Christmas. What happens is next in doubt. Lopetegui has already described this as the greatest achievement, or one backing that may not be forthcoming. The future of Ruben Neves is also in doubt. A rebuild required, with heroes of the club back-to-back 7th place finishes when they reached the European quarter-final, set to move on. But even if the future is not paved with gold, thanks to Lopetegui, Wolves embark on it in the Premier League. But anyway, guys, that's it for today. Thanks very much for watching. Like, share, subscribe, and lots of comments on my front show for daily football news and subscribe to the channel. Never greatly appreciated. Thanks very much for watching. Peace.